Welcome back to Money with Mission. Today, we are lucky to have with us Laura Oldanie. Laura is a green living and wealth coach who blogs at richandresilientliving.com, where she explores money and lifestyle choices for a regenerative future. Her goal is to help people achieve financial freedom and live their best lives in socially and environmentally conscious ways that equally value people, planet, and profit. She received her Permaculture Design Certificate in 2009 and has been exploring how to earn, spend, invest, and manage her money to bring about the change she wants to see in the world ever since. Laura's work has been featured in Forbes, CNBC, and Good Housekeeping. Laura and I met not too long ago, and I'm super excited to have her on the show.
Welcome to Money with Mission, where we show you how to create passive income so that you have options for how to work and how to live your life while leaving a legacy of positive social impact.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm so glad we connected, Felicia.
Me too. So we met, I think we met on LinkedIn, yes? And then I started exploring your website and was like, oh my gosh, this must be my soul sister sitting over here. And how have we not met before? So tell everybody about what you do and how you got to do what you do.
Sure. Well, I'll start with how I came to be doing this, what kind of my life path into this. I grew up not super environmentally conscious, but with a little bit of that there, and appreciation of the outdoors, but very service oriented. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I went overseas after college for a while and then won a State Department fellowship and went back overseas and just got exposed to, other cultures, other ways of thinking, and just really broadened my horizons around, especially being in the Peace Corps, how people were living a rich life. Even though they didn't have the financial means that many of us come to associate with a rich life. And I continued down the path of the service path of working for nonprofits for a while, but eventually I started learning about the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. I came across Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Work Week, the Vicki Robbins and Joe Dominguez, Your Money or Your Life. And it just got me thinking very differently. And about the same time, that's when I discovered permaculture. So by this time, I'm already in my early 40s. I had been doing some financially responsible things along the way, and I had a Roth IRA. I had opened retirement accounts with my employers and had been putting money in there. I'd moved it into the socially responsible funds that were available to me through those plans, but it still didn't feel like enough. I was still supporting industries and practices that don't align with my values. And for those that aren't familiar with permaculture, it's a very broad thing, but I guess for simplicity's sake, I'll say it's a design science that looks to nature and nature's closed loop, abundance-based, no waste system as the model. And most people who know permaculture know that it is most frequently applied in our landscapes. It's very helpful for designing food forests and using gray water, thinking about how to keep water, scarce resources on our property, how to steward those. But it's actually a very holistic design tool that can be applied to the built environment, apply appropriate technologies, our physical and spiritual and mental health, and also our finances. Okay. And so that was what really I got really interested when I discovered permaculture, because like I said, I was already dissatisfied with the options that I was learning about in conventional finance or personal finance. And so between the permaculture, the FIRE approach, this kind of thinking about lifestyle design, I wanted to meld it all together. I wanted to pursue financial freedom and financial independence, but I wanted to do it in a socially conscious way. So many people were achieving FIRE by investing in mainstream index funds. or investing in lots of rental properties,
Or
but
in other words,
managing that.
in other words, investing in things that may not have aligned with their social values, thinking that there was no other way to do it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, and some of them weren't, yes, but also just other people aren't even thinking in a socially conscious way. For them, it's perfectly, they're comfortable to build wealth that way.
Well,
But for me, it wasn't. And I wasn't
yes.
finding those conversations going on that I
Yes.
wanted to have
Got
at
it.
that point. And so that's what led me to start a blog, was just to start having conversations. Is anyone else thinking about this?
Gotcha.
Because in permaculture, you've got the roadmap, kind of like what could the vision look like more at a macroeconomic level, but there's not the roadmap to how to design your life for this kind of financial resilience.
Gotcha. So you said a lot of things that were really, really interesting. The one that's really stuck in my head, you kind of defined permaculture, and you defined it around a lot of different things in our lives, and you ended up on finances and how finances and the word permaculture, which I don't think of those two things together. So can you kind of explain that a little bit more, permaculture and finances?
Sure. I wish we could use a visual here, because there's a permaculture flower, so to speak, with 7 petals on it. And those petals outline the different areas of permaculture. And so I don't have all of them memorized, but one of them is the more like a petal that would apply more to the landscape, which is what everyone thinks of. But there's also the applied technology, or appropriate technologies. I can't remember if it's appropriate or applied technologies. Okay. There's also a petal for, our built environments. And then there's also a petal for economics and finance.
Okay.
And so it's very much there are 2 co-originators, so to speak, of permaculture. And one of the most widely used texts in the permaculture space was by Bill Mollison, and it's the Designer's Manual. So it's a very thick, like college textbook, thick book. And chapter 14 of that book contains a good bit of information around finances and economics. And in fact, most of the most commonly used textbooks for permaculture courses have at least a chapter or a section that looks at this aspect of livelihood, investing, and then that more larger scale of what does that permaculture or regenerative economy look like.
Gotcha. It's very interesting. It sounds complicated, and I guess it is complicated like most of our systems are, but we don't try to look at the whole system. We try to get into the individual bits and pieces of it and work the best we can. I think one of the other big things you said is investing in alignment with your values. And I think that's one of the main things you do. You do coaching with people, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. And so tell me about who would come to you, and what does that look like?
Sure. So I view it as kind of servicing 2 different audiences, related but different. One audience would be the more eco-activist permaculture person who has avoided money because they think it's evil, that it links them to a capitalist system that they don't feel that they feel is harmful and extractive and don't really want to be a part of. Okay. And so I try to walk them through, what are the more neutral aspects of money and personal finance? What can they use as a tool to help themselves so they don't have to always financially struggle without compromising their values? And just get them some basic financial literacy, introduce them to, YouTubers and podcasters that, might make content that doesn't feel as off-putting to them. Okay. So that would be one audience. And then the other audience is those who are already more financially savvy in the conventional sense, but want to start bringing more of that socially conscious approach to their money, be it socially conscious investing, or as we move into these climate challenges, I'm starting to talk more about climate resilient wealth. And how do we build climate resilient wealth? Because for me, wealth is so much more than just money, currencies, stocks, dollars, the financial capital. There are all these other forms of capital in our lives, be it the social capital, the living capital in our gardens, just these other forms of capital. So I help people think about financial resilience and resilience in their own lives. So in addition to making their money more socially conscious, for that second group, then how do we make your wealth overall more climate resilient?
So I really like the thought of being resilient, and that wealth is more than just how many dollars you got in your bank account. And you talked about different forms of capital, and I think you talked about two: social capital, financial capital. You said living. Can you think? There's I know there's Chris Taggart and Chris Martinson and Adam Taggart wrote a book, and they talk about the 8 forms of capital, and I didn't review it before we got on the podcast, but
so we'll see if I can remember all 8 of them off of the top of my head. So we've got financial capital, social capital, the living capital, that's what's outside in our gardens, it's our parks, it's the air we breathe, the streams in our areas. Then we've got material capital, those are the physical things in our lives, our cars, our bikes, the laptops and microphones and headsets we're using right now, the hammer that we use for a job. Then we've got spiritual capital. So whether that be your religious faith or your yoga or meditation practice, or however you center yourself in the universe. Cultural capital. So that's our shared capital that we create with our ethnic food, or, the movies that we create in our culture, books, music, art. Those are examples of cultural capital. I may end up forgetting intellectual capital.
Okay.
So that's what we learn in school, what we know from books, our creativity, our innovation. And then experiential capital is another form. So experience it's like the things we've learned from experience. It's what we can bring when we volunteer. It's the skills we have. And for example, if I read in a book about how to change a bicycle tire, that would be increasing my intellectual capital. If I actually go out and change the tire and do that physically, then I've added to my experiential capital.
I got it. And it seems like in our world, it would behoove us all to have all of those forms in capital in our lives. That would, having all of those increases our resiliency. And we don't have to have it all ourselves personally, but that's where social capital comes in. And somebody who knows how to change a bike tire, somebody who knows what weeds or what plants in the wild are safe to eat, somebody who knows all this. So social media, I think, can decrease our ability to have social capital, which in my mind is knowing somebody face to face, being able to go across the street and talk to my next door neighbor, knowing that if I am out of town and something happens to my house, I can call my next door neighbor and they can take care of it. That to me is social capital, not 50,000 followers or whatever social media gives you. So that's a thing that I think we're losing. We have lost a lot of, and I think we really have to pay attention to rebuilding that ability to form those kinds of relationships that we can count on in hard times.
Well, and I also talk about, so the 8 forms of capital are a great framework. It's how it was written up and really spread widely in the permaculture space. But these concepts around other forms of capital aren't original to permaculture. There's the community capitals framework, which has been used in rural communities to show them that even though they're undercapitalized financially, that they have all of these other forms of capital in their midst. But even just in general, and other people have talked about it, if we think about time as a form of capital, time is what we all really want, the time freedom to use our time the way that fulfills us, and not be feeling like we're making decisions about our time out of fear, of not having enough money. So time is another one. And then these days, you mentioned social media. a friend brought to my attention the idea of attention as a form of capital. People are making corporations especially are making tremendous amounts of money off of our attention. It is a tremendous form of capital. And what we choose to pay attention to, are we consuming with our attention, or are we taking the time to be producers as well with our attention? And
that's
just
very interesting. Go ahead.
How are we using it? And then the third one is health.
Yeah.
None of these other forms of capital really mean anything without the foundation of good health, especially
Yes.
as a doctor.
Yep.
I know this resonates with you.
Yes, 100%, 100%. And for me, for good health, it's all around what we eat and eating healthy food. So that's a whole another form of capital that a lot of people are missing out on, that health component, because we can go into that for a long time, but our whole medical system is set up on sick.
Hi, this is Felicia, host of Money with Mission, the social impact real estate investing podcast for female surgeons and proceduralists. I've been a urologist since 1993. I was one of the first 100 women urologists in the United States. Like most of you, all I knew about money was go to school, get a great job, save money, work until I could afford to retire and to start enjoying life. I quickly knew this was not what I wanted. I started building wealth and passive income with real estate over 20 years ago. I want to help you do the same faster and with more efficiency. Let's give ourselves options in our careers. Money coming in, regardless of whether you go to work, is a way to make that happen. Investing in social impact real estate projects is a way to build passive income, have a positive social impact, and start to build the legacy you want to leave.
We talked a little bit before when we talked about ESG or environmental, I can't remember what's the
social and governance.
And explain what that is and give me your thoughts on that.
So again, I have steered away from that. So I'm not going to be the best person to explain it, but I will do my best, because all of my efforts are focused on finding alternatives to invest in outside of the stock market, because
Gotcha.
I don't find ESG or socially responsible SRI options satisfactory to me.
That are stock market driven. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think if it's there, I don't say that I do own one stock, like that I've bought on my own in my self-directed IRA, but I feel like there are very few companies that are shareholder driven that are going to meet my criteria, just because of the very nature of the definition of corporation and stocks and shareholders, and what corporations have to do to satisfy their shareholders. And so
I'm going to back up a minute, because ESG almost always, if you look at it in the traditional sense, means investing in stocks and mutual funds and that kind of thing. So
yes,
keep that in mind. So if you're reading and you're hearing about something that says ESG, that's talking about Wall Street. Social responsibility and social impact investing can be different things. Those can be things investing outside of Wall Street. Now, go ahead, and you were going to talk about.
Sure. So to my understanding, ESG, so we talked about that it's environmental, social, governance. Those are lenses or filters that are applied to different corporations that have stocks, offer stocks. And so you would eliminate out like fossil fuels or tobacco, or whatever, or maybe you want to prioritize companies that have good governance. That's the governance in it, that they have environmental criteria, which would be the fossil fuels we already discussed, or some others. You can screen that way. You can screen for things to have them, or screen things out. But there's really still, even in those ESG funds, you're going to find companies that are producing tremendous amounts of plastic waste with their packaging or their products, unhealthy beverages, financial institutions with very predatory practices. They may have good governance for their board, the way their boards are run, and how their hiring practices, but it's not what I want my money to support. And so I avoid it.
So that I mean, all I'm hearing so loudly and clearly from you is investing in things that align with your values. So, and you're very, very strong and clear about that. And tell me how you or do you help people who come to you just really evaluate what their values are with relation to this, or what does that, are you understanding my question? Kind of.
Yes.
Okay.
I walk through people through that a little bit. I think that there's been, I know a lot of people who work more from the conventional space. They use the UN Sustainable Development Goals to help people think through what are the areas that are important to them.
Okay.
I think I haven't gone as deeply with that, because I do feel like that there are so few investing opportunities that align with my values outside of the stock market that I don't need to apply the criteria yet. And so I haven't really helped guide people to that. It's just, I'm saying, here's what's available, and then letting them work within their needs. Because I also think that when you get out of the stock market, the returns are different, the financial returns, and so people have to balance that for themselves. Maybe it's within the area they want to support, but it's not going to provide the financial return that they feel like they need. I mean, I also like to work with people on recognizing, when you read my bio, the people, planet, profit, we can talk about financial returns and financial bottom lines, but there are other bottom lines. And for me, those other bottom lines are just as, if not more important. What is the point of saving up for retirement for the future if at the same time I'm completely negating that future by the way I'm saving money for it?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. You're preaching to the choir, I'm telling you right now, miss. It is, yeah, just getting in alignment. You don't have to invest in things that don't align with you. If investing in fossil fuels, even though it's a great tax write-off, doesn't feel like it benefits you, it doesn't feel right to you, there are other things to invest in. That's what I was going to say. I try to talk to people about investing, and even when they're investing and not for a financial return, it is still an investment, because you do expect a return of some kind. If you invest in Habitat for Humanity, you expect them to build a house and somebody to be able to live in that house and do that. That's a return that ultimately there is a financial return for bigger than you. And I think that's what you're saying. There's a much bigger world to look at. Yes, we need to have our needs met. That's the bottom rung of Maslow's hierarchy, and everybody can decide what their needs are. And once you get there, once you've got that and you're safe and secure, your family is, let's go for some significance and really try to make a difference in this world by investing in things that do make a difference, whether it's for your own return or whether it's for your own financial return, which is how I want to, and I invest for impact and financial return. And those things are out there. Some of the food access things we're doing, they give you a return. Is it going to necessarily be as gigantic of return as some apartment multifamily investing could do? No. And I'm not talking down multifamily, because there is social impact investing in multifamily. It may not be, it doesn't feel right to me. And I feel right, I think it was kind of boring, actually. Let's put it that way. I just didn't like it. But I can get into making sure the soil is going to be healthy. I can get into making sure that people have good food, good, healthy food to eat, and figure out a way that we can get investors a return on their investment along with that. And I think that's what you're talking about. Let's go back to resiliency a little bit. And I think I understand what it means. I think most people do, but let's make sure we're talking about the same thing when we talk about being resilient.
Okay. And I'm glad you went back to it, because I kind of wanted to steer us there anyways, because for me, this resilience component is very much tied into the more socially conscious regenerative way of investing, with the potentially lower, slower rate of return, that more patient capital. Because the more resilient I am, the less afraid I I am to have those financial returns in my life, because I know that the other forms of capital are strong in my life.
Mhm.
And in fact, if I think about it, if we all think about it, what's truly a resilient, which forms of capital are truly resilient? How resilient is financial capital? What have we seen happen in Argentina and other places where currencies have been completely devalued? What does it mean when so much of our financial capital is tied up in computers and databases and involving having electricity?
Yeah.
You know, it's volatile, it's fragile, it's speculative. It's the least resilient probably of all these forms of capital that we've outlined.
Yes.
And so and that's just the resilience, like that aspect of it. But it's also what we really want in life are those other forms of capital. The financial capital is just what we all use as a society right now to access the other forms of capital. So if we can be resilient, we can access more of those other forms of capital with less and less money.
Mhm.
And it makes our lives so much richer. It makes us more creative. It makes us more connected to the people in our communities. It's a win-win-win. And it's so often it's better for the environment.
That's really, really interesting. Because I'm just thinking through that resiliency and the other forms of capital not related to cash, and how you have all these other forms of capital may give you time freedom, which is the thing, having time, what we talked about earlier, to do what you want to do, to be able to function the way you want to function, is the thing studies have shown that's what makes people happy, having time to do what they want to do. So building those other forms of capital, social capital, social capital is the one that I remember all the time, because I feel like it's one of the easier ones to get. It really is, but not one we all focus on very much. So building those will make you much, much more resilient, just like you said, than having a bunch of zeros in your bank account. And not just one, not a zero at the beginning, but however many zeros attached to a bigger number at the beginning, because that can all go away very quickly. We're looking at inflation. We're not, I mean, Laura talked about Argentina and Zimbabwe and those countries, but look at the United States right now. We're having some significant money problems. So building those other forms of capital are going to be the way to be more resilient for the future and forever, really.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, because I've started to talk about those multiple forms of capital or those multiple forms of wealth as a great hedge against inflation.
Yes,
yeah,
it's really cool. So this has been super, super exciting and interesting to talk to. I hope everybody else has gotten something out of this. Laura coaches people on becoming more resilient and on finding those things to invest in. Can you give us one place to go if anybody wants to, besides coming to you, which we're going to go, we're going to give you Laura's contact information, because I think you will have a lot of people who are looking for help in trying to figure out this whole situation. You gave me a couple of recommendations of where to look as places to invest in outside of Wall Street that align. Let's give us one.
So a specific potential investment people could consider making?
Yeah,
yes. Okay.
And please, this is not investment advice. Please remember that this is not investment advice. This is, you look, and this is, for me, the reason I asked this is to, people are going, well, give me an example. I can just hear it.
Yeah,
what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Okay, so we talked about this idea of real estate, and this will give me the opportunity to say, clarify something. I'm not against real estate investing. In fact, I think it can be done very socially consciously. Mm-hmm. I have a guest blog post on my blog by someone who invested in a home and turned it into a sober living home. Mm-hmm. I think we could do some really creative owner financing types, socially conscious real estate investing examples. So just to say that for the record, but specifically for people who don't want to be property owners, there's an organization called American Homeowner Preservation, and they're working to help homeowners who have gotten behind in their mortgage, help them stay in their home. So they're buying up these mortgages that are at risk, working with the homeowners, and they're funding it through investors. So
Right.
we, as non-accredited, because that's the other thing, I'm not an accredited investor. That's the other challenge I face in finding access to these, is that it's an opportunity for non-accredited investors to put some money towards housing in a way that's really needed. So
I
it's
appreciate
American
that.
homeowner preservation.
And I'm trying to get somebody from that group on the show. So I do like that organization a lot. Go and investigate it yourself, evaluate it yourself. This is not investment advice. Just knowing that there are other companies out there. There are companies out there doing things in a way that may align with you. So to get in touch with Laura's contact information is going to be in the show notes. Laura is asking for people to come to regen, REGEN at moneywithmission.com, and you will find her coaching program there. Laura doesn't charge a lot of money. She wants to help people be more resilient. From what I've spoken with Laura a couple of times now, just her whole thing is about building a more resilient society and helping people align with their values, with their investments. I was surprised at the affordability of your coaching. So you guys, go to regen, REGEN at moneywithmission.com to find out more about what Laura has to offer. Please check out her website, her blog posts. It's some good stuff on there. And I think you'll be really, really excited and interested to learn how many ways you can have an impact, a positive impact on our world and build resilience at the same time. Thanks again, Laura. We'll see you guys next time.
You've been listening to Money with Mission. There are projects happening right now where you can have a great financial return while positively affecting the lives of others. To learn more about our opportunities, go to moneywithmission.com.